Jasmine Crockett didn't yell. She didn't fold. When Nancy Mace tried to bait her with a threat on live TV, Crockett's calm response turned the moment into a national reckoning on respect, power, and restraint. Child, that single word, half-spoken and barely out of Representative Jasmine Crockett's mouth, hung in the air like a match over gasoline. It wasn't meant to ignite anything. Just her usual style, sharp, expressive, rooted in her Southern identity. She was mid-sentence, dissecting a flawed argument about civil rights enforcement. When it happened. Live. National television. No delay. No filter. Hello friends, if you new here then don't forget to hit subscribe button, and if you like then hit the like button also, and don't forget to tell me in the comments where you from watching this video. Representative Nancy Mace's chair scraped back. Not a gentle shift. The kind of movement that says, I'm about to interrupt you. And I don't care who's watching. Then came the line, so jarring. So loaded it made half the room stop breathing. I'm no child. If you want to take it outside, we can do that. It hit like a slap across the face. The hearing room, usually filled with controlled bickering and rehearsed retorts, fell into a stunned, twitching silence. Every camera turned. Every phone lifted just a little higher. But Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't match the energy. She didn't flinch, didn't even raise her voice. Instead, she leaned in just enough. Just close enough for the mic to pick up her words. Calm, precise, razor sharp. I didn't threaten you. I spoke truth. If that rattled you, that's not my problem. But threatening another member, that's a different line. The power in that moment didn't come from volume. It came from restraint. Crockett could have gone off. She had every reason. But she didn't take the bait. She let the silence between her words do the heavy lifting. Across the room, Rep. Maxwell Ortiz fidgeted in his seat. 2 chairs down, Rep. Shelley Wren pulled her tablet closer, trying not to show her alarm. Staffers by the door exchanged a glance. Nobody knew what was about to happen next. No one had seen this coming. What viewers at home didn't see was the way Jasmine's hands stayed perfectly still. On the desk, no shaking. No twitch, just focus. The kind of focus that says, I've handled worse than this. And I'm not about to give you what you want. Behind her, one of her aides, a former legal intern named Alina, whispered something barely audible. Jasmine didn't react, she didn't need to. Her point had already landed. TV anchors scrambled to cut to commercial. But it was too late. Clips were already being clipped. Twitter, now X, was flooding with hashtags. Before the network could even issue a statement. People weren't just watching. They were reacting. They were seeing something they rarely got in Washington. A black woman standing her ground. With steel in her voice and fire in her eyes. And doing it without even raising her tone. Outside the committee room, the hallway was buzzing. Capitol Hill reporters started drafting their openings. Some still fumbling over what exactly had just happened. One intern was already calling it the moment of the session. Another texted, Mace just threatened to fight Crockett. Did y'all hear that? But Jasmine didn't get caught up in the theatrics. She wasn't thinking about clips. She was thinking about her grandmother, who taught her that silence has power. That grace under fire isn't just classy. It's strategic. That sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to a bully is not react the way they expect. Crockett leaned back ever so slightly and adjusted her mic. Her next statement was about data transparency. Just like that, right back to policy. But the energy in the room had shifted. Everyone knew it. Nobody wanted to be the next one to speak. That wasn't politics. That was presence. But that moment wasn't the real story. It was what came after. The second Jasmine Crockett stepped out of the committee room. The hallway lit up, not from cameras, but from tension. Staffers gathered like storm clouds, not quite sure whether to speak or stay out of her path. Jasmine didn't say much at first. She walked with a calm that looked unnatural. In that moment, like someone who knew exactly how to hold their peace, when every part of them wanted to do the opposite. Elena caught up to her, tablet in hand, already reading the headlines that were starting to stack up. "She's trending," Elena murmured, eyes scanning her screen. They clipped the moment already. It's on everything: C-SPAN, MSNBC, Reddit, even TikTok. Jasmine barely glanced over. Of course they did. They turned the corner and entered her office. Room 2413 in the Rayburn building. Door closed. The buzz of Capitol Hill disappeared behind it. Inside, it was quiet. Comfortable, even. A candle flickered on the side table. Lavender and bergamot. Something Jasmine lit before every high-stress hearing. But the calm didn't match the electricity in her veins. She took off her heels and sat on the edge of the desk. Not the chair. That's where she did her real thinking. On the edge, eyes level with the people in front of her. "Play it back," she said. Elena tapped the tablet. The video played. The moment. The insult. The threat. And Jasmine's answer. Watching it as a viewer, not a participant, hit differently. She saw her own restraint. She also saw Mace's face, tight, defensive, as if trying to reclaim control of a room that had slipped through her fingers. Crockett sighed. She knew what she was doing. That wasn't a question. One of the younger interns, Dion, spoke up from the corner. "Do you think she'll apologize?" Jasmine looked at him like a teacher waiting for a student to answer their own question. He nodded. Right. Of course not. What most people didn't see was how personal these hearings could get. Not just political theater. When someone like Mace used words like "take it outside," it hit different. It evoked old playground tactics. It played into stereotypes. It signaled disrespect. Especially when directed at someone like Jasmine, who'd already fought battles to even be in that chair. The door opened again. Her chief of staff, Malcolm Dean, stepped in, holding a yellow legal pad. His face was tight. "We got a problem." Everyone turned. "What kind of problem?" Jasmine asked, her voice flat. "Someone just called. Not media. Not a constituent. A guy from Tennessee. Claimed to be just watching the hearing. Said he'd bet money that you and Mace would end up throwing hands before recess." Silence. He continued. "Said he'd put $500 on you." Then laughed. Elena's jaw clenched. "You record it?" Jasmine asked. "No. But I traced the number. Already flagged it. Forwarded the report." Jasmine exhaled through her nose and stood up. He thought that was funny. Sounded like it. "Good," she said. "Let's make sure everyone sees how funny it is. Because this wasn't about internet clout or spicy clips anymore. This was about a culture that still saw black women as spectacle, as something to be bet on, as something to provoke. And Jasmine had no intention of letting that go quietly. She walked to the window, pulled back the curtain. Outside, the Capitol dome looked the same as always. Clean, calm, historic. But something had changed. Not out there. In here. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her whole team knew the look. "Draft a response," she said. "I want it direct. No fluff. We're not going to pretend that threatening violence in a federal building is normal." Elena nodded. Dion was already typing. Malcolm scribbled something. Want to post it tonight? No, Jasmine said. Morning. I want them to wake up to it. But while Crockett regrouped, someone else was dialing a number. That would cross a whole new line. The voicemail came just after 6:13 p.m. The office line had already gone quiet for the day. Most staffers had cleared out. But Dion stayed late to finish edits on the response letter. He was the one who heard it first. It was short, about 20 seconds long. Male voice. No name. Southern accent, sharp but untrained. Like someone used to talking loud in small rooms. The message played once. Then again. And a third time. Each time, Dion's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He hit the intercom. Malcolm, you need to hear this. They gathered around. Alina came back from the printer. Set the papers down without a word. And hit play. You know what I think? I think y'all should just let them fight it out. No rules. Bare knuckle. I got 500 on the loudmouth one. What's her name? Crocker? Yeah, I'd bet money she gets the first punch. Hell, I'd pay to watch that. Anyway, just thought I'd call y'all. Keep it spicy. Click. No number. It came in blocked. No name, just breath, ignorance. And a smile you could hear in his voice. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Then Malcolm pulled out his phone. I'm alerting the sergeant at arms. Do you think it's serious? Dion asked. Elena didn't look away from the screen. He didn't need it to be serious. He needed it to be real. And it was. That call, however pathetic it seemed, wasn't just a prank. It was a reminder. People were watching. Not to learn. Not to vote smarter. Not to understand civil rights policy. They were watching for entertainment. Like it was cable drama. Like Jasmine was just another character. Built to get clapped back at. Malcolm returned 10 minutes later. Filed the report. They'll follow up with the Capitol Police. I also notified comms. I think you should go public. Jasmine sat down at her desk. She didn't look surprised. Just tired. Not the kind of tired you sleep off. The kind you carry around in your bones. She clicked her pen. Slowly. Rhythmically. Then stopped. You ever wonder, she said, almost to herself, how many people would rather watch us tear each other apart than listen to what we actually said? No one answered. Because everyone knew. The message wasn't just about her. It was about the system. The same system that let that message feel normal. The same system that let Nancy Mace threaten her on the record. Without a blink from security. The same system that expected Jasmine to stay calm, collected, and composed. When someone just called to place a bet on her dignity. She tapped her fingers on the desk once. Then looked up. Let's post the letter tonight. Alina hesitated. You sure? Yeah. Because tomorrow's already too late. At 7:43 p.m. Her office account posted the statement. It wasn't dramatic. No caps. No hashtags. Just the truth. Today, during a hearing meant to address real civil rights concerns, I was threatened by a colleague. Later, my office received a call from a man betting money that I would engage in a physical fight on the House floor. I won't be turning that into content. I won't be silenced either. This isn't a spectacle. It's a job. And I intend to keep doing it with dignity. No matter what. No hashtags. No mention of Mace by name. It spread fast anyway. By 9:12 p.m. the replies had reached the thousands. Dozens of fellow lawmakers reposted it. Commentators on both sides started weighing in. Some tried to spin it. Others just tried to make it disappear. But the clip from earlier was now everywhere. And this message made sure people understood the context behind the calm. Jasmine didn't check the notifications. She didn't need to. She'd said what mattered. She stood by the window again. Outside, the streets of D.C. were wet with drizzle. The lights of passing cars washing against the sidewalk. She could hear her grandmother's voice in her head. They'll always come for your peace before your power. She wasn't letting them have either. But going public didn't settle the fire. It made it burn hotter. By morning, it wasn't just trending. It was everywhere. Clips of the committee hearing had been sliced, captioned, and stitched across platforms. From Instagram reels to cable news commentary. The same 6 seconds looped endlessly. Nancy Mace throwing the challenge. And Jasmine Crockett's steady, unmoved response. But it wasn't just about the words anymore. It was about what people saw in that moment. They saw a woman who didn't shrink. Who didn't stoop. Who didn't snap. They saw restraint. Where rage would have been justified. And for millions of people, especially black women, it struck a nerve that wasn't just political. It was personal. A video from a high school teacher in Fort Worth went viral overnight. She sat in her parked car, still in her work ID badge. Eyes glassy from holding back frustration. She didn't even raise her voice. She said into the camera, "Do y'all know how hard that is? Do you know how many times we've had to bite our tongue? To stay in rooms that never wanted us there in the first place?" It got 1 million views before noon. But not everyone was clapping. Beneath the surface of praise, something uglier was growing. Troll accounts mocked Jasmine's appearance. Bots spun fake tweets she never posted. A few far-right influencers jumped on the story, saying she played the victim card, or was weaponizing race to dodge real issues. They were loud. But they weren't the majority. And Crockett, she wasn't in her office scrolling. She was across town at the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, speaking on community police relations in Minneapolis. She stood behind the podium. Same calm energy, voice even. "No, I'm not here to talk about yesterday," she said to the first question. "I'm here to talk about lives. About policy. About fixing what's broken." But when a reporter pressed again, asking if she feared for her safety after the voicemail, she didn't dodge. "I fear silence more than I fear ignorance," she replied. It hit like a drum. Still, the comments kept coming in. One message landed in her office inbox at 3:12 p.m. From a woman in Kansas City. "Thank you for not giving them the show they wanted. You reminded me how power really looks." That night, Jasmine sat alone at home for the first time in days. The noise of the world still buzzing outside her apartment windows. She had a plate of leftover Thai food, a half-read copy of The Fire Next Time open on the table, and her phone face down. She didn't need to check what people were saying. She already knew. Because she wasn't new to this. In college, she'd been the only black woman. In her constitutional law seminar, she'd watched people interrupt her mid-sentence, and then quote her thoughts as if they were their own. In her first year as an attorney, she'd had a judge ask if she was the court reporter. And now in Congress, it was just more of the same. Just louder. More public. More digital. This wasn't new. But this time the world was watching. And this time, she wasn't just standing up for herself. A friend texted her late. "You made it impossible for them to pretend they didn't see it. Because they had seen it, all of it. Her poise. Her power. And the call that made a mockery of both." The View ran a segment the next day. All 5 co-hosts tore into Mace's behavior, calling it reckless, immature, and deeply inappropriate for a lawmaker. One even said, "You can't weaponize stereotypes against a black woman, and then play victim when she doesn't take the bait." That clip went viral too. The layers were peeling. This wasn't about a single exchange anymore. It was about respect. It was about how America still treats certain women, when they don't conform to the script written for them. But in the middle of it all, One voice stood up louder than the rest. By Thursday afternoon, the pressure on Nancy Mace was growing. Journalists had been hounding her for 2 days. Headlines were getting sharper. Constituents were asking questions. Even some of her allies were starting to look uncomfortable. But still, nothing. No statement. No interview. Just a thin tweet 2 nights earlier that said, "I don't apologize for being passionate. People should learn how to take a joke." A joke. That word didn't sit well. Not with anyone who'd actually watched the footage. When Mace finally appeared on the National Room, a low-profile cable interview she likely thought would be easy to rein, the cracks started to show. The host leaned in just a bit. "Congresswoman, do you regret the way you spoke to Representative Crockett during Tuesday's hearing?" Mace forced a smile. "I regret that people can't tell when someone's being sarcastic." The host blinked. "Were you joking about fighting her?" "Obviously. I mean, no one's actually suggesting a fistfight on the House floor. Except someone had. A man had literally called and bet money on it." But Mace didn't acknowledge that. She moved on to her usual talking points. Crime, taxes, and how people are too sensitive these days. It didn't go well. Clips from the interview spread almost as fast as Crockett's calm response had 2 days earlier. This time, the reactions were different. Sharper. Less forgiving. A user on Threads posted, "If your defense is it was a joke, then your punchline was violence. That's not funny. It's weak." Another quote tweeted the segment with, "This isn't SNL, sis. You threatened a coworker on live TV. And now you want to smile through it?" Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett didn't say a word about the interview. She didn't need to. Instead, she kept her schedule. That same day, she spoke at a local forum in Toledo, Ohio. An event planned weeks in advance. The room was filled with educators, nurses, single mothers, and church leaders. Mostly women, many of them black. No fancy cameras. No bright lights. Just folding chairs and honest talk. A woman stood up from the back row. Older, gray streaked through her braids. She didn't give her name. Just her story. "I watched the hearing," she said. "I saw what they tried to do to you. I've had people talk to me like that in grocery stores, in courtrooms, and staff meetings. You held it together in front of everybody. And I just want to say, I saw it. All of it." Jasmine didn't get emotional. Not in the way people expect. She just nodded slowly and replied. That moment wasn't new for any of us. The only difference is this time, it was on camera. The room got quiet. Not heavy, just real. After the forum, a local reporter asked her how she felt about the attention. About the viral clips. About the fallout. Jasmine paused. Chose her words like bricks, solid, intentional. "I think the real work is what happens when the cameras are off," she said. "That's when you figure out who's in this for the noise. And who's in this to build something." The reporter asked if she thought Mace would apologize. "She already made her choice," Crockett said. "Now I'm making mine." That night, Jasmine's team posted a clip from the Toledo Forum. Not the confrontation. Not the viral hearing. Just her standing on a worn wooden stage. In a school auditorium. Speaking about how dignity and discipline walk hand in hand. It didn't go viral in the usual sense. But it traveled far enough. To inboxes, to group chats. Where the noise couldn't reach. Because this wasn't about dragging someone. It was about reminding people what leadership should look like. When the temperature spikes. And the cameras roll. But Crockett wasn't done, Asante. Not until she'd spoken on her terms. The Sunday morning air in Cleveland was still warming up. When the studio lights turned on. It wasn't a national debate stage. It wasn't Capitol Hill. It was a radio show, morning table talk. a decades-old staple in Northeast Ohio. Hosted by Leona Briggs. A no-nonsense woman in her early 60s. Who'd been speaking truth. Longer than some of her guests had been alive. Jasmine Crockett had accepted the invitation quietly. No press blast. No promo tweets. Just one mic. One room. And a voice that needed to be heard, without interruption. Leona adjusted her headphones and leaned in. "Congresswoman, thank you for being here." "Thank you for having me," Jasmine said. Her tone level. "We've seen the clip. We've read the tweets. But I want to start here." When she said, "Take it outside," what was the first thing that went through your mind? Jasmine looked off for a second. Then back. That it wasn't about me. That it was about control, she said. "You don't threaten someone like that. Unless you've already lost the argument." Leona smiled slightly. "But you didn't respond the way folks expected." "I've had years of practice," Jasmine said. "People think poise is automatic. It's not. You learn it after you've been pushed enough times to know what they're really trying to do." They talked for 20 minutes. No yelling. No theatrics. Just hard truth, wrapped in plain talk. Jasmine told stories from her courtroom days. How certain prosecutors would smirk every time she entered the room, waiting for her to slip up. How jurors sometimes looked shocked that she was the lawyer and not someone's assistant. How dignity was often a strategy, not a default. Leona didn't interrupt. She let the space stretch between answers, giving the words room to breathe. Eventually, the conversation circled back to Congress. Leona asked, "What would you say to young girls watching what happened this week?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "I'd say, don't shrink. Don't get small to make someone else comfortable. Learn when to speak and when to sit back. And let someone embarrass themselves. And when that moment comes, because it will, remember who you are and who raised you." She took a breath. Her voice didn't crack, but her throat tightened. "I was raised by women who taught me to fight with my mind before I ever lifted my hands. I don't need to meet disrespect with disrespect. That's not where my power lives." There was a pause. Not awkward, just weighty. Leona leaned back and said, "You know, people forget. That silence can be loud too." "That's the kind of loud I like," Jasmine said. After the interview, there were no fanfares, no sudden flood of camera crews. Just a few handshakes. A warm thank you, and a quiet walk to the car. But word traveled fast. Clips from the radio interview circulated online within hours. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. And people are hungry for that kind of honesty. One comment summed it up. She spoke like somebody's auntie, pastor, and law professor rolled into one. No drama. Just wisdom. Later that day, Jasmine returned to D.C. She walked into the Capitol through the east entrance. Same as always. A security guard she didn't know gave her a nod and said quietly, "You handled that better than I would have." She smiled. "That's why I'm here and you're not." It wasn't arrogance. It was clarity. She knew exactly what she brought to that building. And now, so did the rest of the country. But her final words weren't about Mace. They were about something much bigger. 3 days after the dust settled, Jasmine Crockett stood alone on the balcony of her apartment in D.C., her coffee growing cold in her hand. The noise had quieted. The cameras had moved on. The media was busy chewing on a new headline. Another scandal, another distraction. But that was fine with her. She wasn't doing this for the headlines. Inside, a notepad lay open on her kitchen table. On it, one line circled in pen over and over. "Silence is not weakness. It's a weapon when you know how to use it." It was something her mother used to say. A woman who raised 3 kids while working 2 jobs in Shreveport. A woman who taught Jasmine to speak up. But only after she'd listened long enough to know exactly what to say. That memory sat with her all week. The truth was, the moment in that hearing didn't just test her composure. It tested everything she'd built herself to be. Her instincts, her patience, her commitment to carrying herself with grace, even when disrespected in front of the world. Because what Mace did, it wasn't just political theater. It was a moment designed to trigger something. To provoke. To poke at something old and ugly and racial. That never really left American politics. But Crockett had seen it before. In courtrooms. At city council meetings. Even in college debate teams. Where she was often the only black woman at the table. This wasn't new. What was new was how many people had seen it this time. Really seen it. People who'd never heard her name. Now followed her career. Not because she shouted the loudest. But because she refused to play the part expected of her. She didn't throw chairs. She didn't fire back with insults. She didn't make it about revenge. She made it about respect. And that choice. That quiet, deliberate choice. Landed louder than any insult ever could. Later that evening, she visited a local high school. On the southeast side of the city. No press. Just a small group of teens in a civics class. Who had written to her after the hearing. They were curious, fired up. Trying to figure out what all this meant for them. A girl named Janiyah raised her hand. Did it hurt when she said that to you? Jasmine thought for a second. A little, she admitted. But not the way you'd think. What hurt more was knowing. There are people who'll see that. And think it's normal. Like it's okay to threaten someone. Just because you disagree. Another student, Marcus, spoke up. Why didn't you clap back? She smiled. Because if I had, that's all the story would have been. Not what I said, not the policy I came to defend. Just the clash, the mess. I didn't come here to be a headline. I came here to do work. And that was the real message. Control your narrative before someone else writes it for you. Let your presence be loud enough. That you don't need to shout. Don't trade dignity for applause. On her way out of the school, the teacher pulled her aside. They needed to hear that, she said. I think I did too, Jasmine replied. Outside, the air was brisk. Not cold, just enough to wake her up. She pulled her coat tighter. And walked to the car with her team. In silence. The weight of the week was lifting. Not because it was over. But because she knew she hadn't lost herself in it. This wasn't the story of a meltdown. It wasn't the story of a feud. It was the story of a woman. Choosing discipline over drama. Conviction over chaos. And maybe that's the real lesson. One worth remembering long after the trend dies down. If you're watching this right now, ask yourself. What do you want people to remember? When they see your name. Next to a moment that tests you. Be loud in purpose. Quiet in ego. And always ready to speak. Not to win, but to lead. If this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. And share it with someone who needs to hear it. We're not done telling the truth. Not even close.